When I designed the Morrigan's look, I kind of wanted to go for a more fantasy-based look, but something that was functional. So when I had a friend and she was like, hey, is she wearing a skirt or shorts? I was like, it's totally shorts. Who wants to run around in a skirt in space? Nobody. Hey guys, I'm Liana Kangas. I'm currently the artist for She Said Destroy in Vault Comics, and today I'm going to draw the Morrigan. The Morrigan, she is a space goddess, and it's set in the very, very, very far future. If you like games like Final Fantasy and Star Wars and stuff like that, this is definitely a comic for you. Joe Corral is the writer. He did a great job building a lot of really cool relationships in the comic, and I'm really honored to kind of bring them to life. It's about two sisters who are goddesses, and one of them is trying to take away the remaining power of the goddesses. What's kind of cool is I'm still really new to drawing the Morrigan because we introduce her a little bit later on. So every time I get to draw her, I get really excited. We started working on this actually sometime at San Diego last year, at San Diego Comic-Con. At that point, we had already had the Morrigan's character design going on, and we kind of wanted to flesh out the rest right before, just in the pitching stages. And he sent me a lot of Celtic, Irish kind of inspiration in terms of outfits and culture, and we kind of took that and went a little bit more modernized. I also really love fashion, so Steve McQueen was a huge inspiration for her cape, and I kind of wanted her to look a little bit more like sci-fi yet fantasy, more on the medieval side. Something that I was thinking oh, it would be really fun to cosplay this, or a little bit different than what you see in typical fantasy stuff. So I actually started working in comics 3 years ago, and I first started with Joe. That's how we actually met. He was the editor of this project called Mine, and it's a Planned Parenthood anthology where he got some really incredible names like Neil Gaiman and Gail Simone. Gosh, the list kind of goes on and on. I was actually a part of it. I was on a story with Pat Shand, who's a writer of Snap Flash Hustle and stuff like that, and he did this Destiny New York short, which is one of his series that Joe let him kind of do a little side story in. That's how I kind of started out in comics, was getting into anthologies and meeting new people, meeting friends, and Joe and I kind of just always stayed in touch. We have a lot of the same groups of friends, like Vita Ayala, one of my favorite people on the planet, who I actually ended up working with for a bit with Sarah Litt for Black Mask. It was a series called Devil's Die, which was a part of the Black universe, and I just finished that up early this year. It was a really fun project to work on. Very serious story. Vita's an incredible writer as well. I would see Joe at signings and stuff like that, and we just kind of kept in touch. He asked me one day something, I forget exactly how it happened, but he asked me if I was interested in gods in space, and I was like, well, who isn't really? I mean, it's kind of hard to say no to that. He always said that the Morrigan was always painted in this bad light because she is the goddess of death. I was like, yeah, you're right. She is always kind of put in a very dark light. So I think at that point, I realized that I wanted to be a part of it because I am very attracted to darker past characters. And because he wanted something a little different for the Morrigan, I wanted to be a part of that. So I'm gonna switch here. I kind of sketched out with the red pencil her, bust action. And sometimes I go over with another pencil. Typically when I'm drawing digitally, I end up doing blue pencil and then do a looser sketch pencil. Depending on the brush that I use, I use Kyle brushes in Photoshop, I actually just ink straight over my blue lines instead of penciling. It always turns out, I think, more dynamic that way. One of the funnest things about the Morrigan, I love her costume so much, but I had someone tweet at me the other day. She was like, I'm not sure I would want to cosplay that. It seems like I'd poke my eye out with those spikes. So I thought that was pretty funny. So the book actually comes out May 29th, and I'm really excited. We spent about, I want to say, probably 5 months working with that, and a lot of the planning was hey, do you like this video game? Oh yeah, I like this video game too. I think that was actually the whole planning process was us just comparing back and forth what our favorite like Final Fantasy was, and then like what parts of Star Wars that we love, and you know, which trilogies or whatever. That's my favorite part in comics, is the collaborative effort that you sometimes have with other people and you don't expect for it to like work out as good as it did. I am currently inking now. This is like one of my favorite pens. I haven't actually worked with one in a while, so if I seem a little shaky, that's why. The Pentel brush pens are super fun, and they kind of emulate what I use digitally for the series on a much bigger scale. Joe is very cool about letting me have my freedom in terms of what I design for everybody. I wanted Bridget to look like a goddess. I wanted her to look very classy and almost towering and have a little bit of a kind of like a queen aspect to her, royalty almost. And I wanted the Morrigan to look like a fighter. From what I've gathered with Joe and I's conversation, she is like a protector of her people. Even though she's the goddess of death, she protects life too. I feel like every time I've drawn the Morrigan, she has this very concerned mom expression on her face, which is totally her personality, I think. I'm gonna try and erase and hope that it doesn't smear. And maybe throw some Posca on this. I love working with under pencils so much, but I always forget that when I work with like a red one, it's much more visible. So you really have to like pay attention to like where you erase and if you like wait for your inks to dry on time. I've been on a couple anthologies now. I was on that Mind Planned Parenthood one with Joe. After that one, I worked on the Where We Live anthology through Image Comics. That was a really great opportunity. Erica Schultz actually asked me to be a part of that. We did kind of a personal story between the both of us. It's about our dads, and that whole book is supportive of the Vegas shootings. So I worked on that, and then I worked on that series with Vida Ayala through the Black series. And then Joe and I worked on this. It's been a wild ride. I feel like I probably erased enough. Throw down some Posca. This is like that really intense, awesome, like anime bright blue. This is perfect. I tend to use a lot of very saturated colors in my work, and I tried to lighten it up just a little bit, like take a step back so it looked maybe a little more accessible in sequential work, and that's how we kind of came to the current like color palette that we have right now. And we just actually got Rebecca Nalty on colors for the series, which is really fun. Her work is awesome. I think she's currently working on Xena and Glow right now, so that's really cool. And she's killing it with the colors, so gorgeous. It's always fun to figure out new art supplies. So I actually just got a box of these Posca, but they're the thicker ones, so I've never used these thin ones before, and I really like the thin ones. I feel like I'll do her cape and maybe do a couple more spot color. So I typically always tell people in interviews, if they ever want to ask about how to get into comics or anything like that, my DMs are always open. I really enjoy talking to new creators because I think that there needs to be more of a discussion about it, especially with women in comics, and how to pursue it, because I didn't quite know, and I had a little bit of a rocky start trying to figure it out. But I had some great friends along the way that kind of helped me through it, and great friends that support me through it, which is why you see this wonderful award here for surviving 2 cons back-to-back by my wonderful friend Jaslyn of Bombsheller. I went to an engineering college, but I actually got my degree in communications, and I did marketing for a day job for probably, I want to say, 5 of the 8 years that I worked there. And when I first realized that I wanted to start freelancing and doing art as a career, I did just drew whatever I wanted. I 100% think that people should always draw fan art. And I think that that is just as valid as any original piece of artwork that you're gonna put in your portfolio. I think it makes more sense, really, because you're connecting with somebody else's art. So you're kind of gathering that together. I mean, at one point, I started just creating original pieces to put in my portfolio. So I think that you'll just organically get there. I always like go back in and add like extra blacks. I think that came from me working on that Black series, because of working in a noir format has kind of changed my view of how I do inks and fill in like any colors and stuff like that. Almost kind of like to wrap the piece compositionally. All right, yeah, I think I'm pretty much wrapped up with this piece, and maybe I'll add like a highlight to her eyes real quick, and I feel like that might be it. And if you notice that I'm coloring the Morrigan's eyes yellow, it's because they definitely are. Ooh, that one's gonna bubble up for a second. It's gonna take a while to dry. I'm Liana Kangas, and I drew the Morrigan from She Said Destroy.